Okay, drawing students, so this is part 2. We started with angles, big shapes, small shapes, and now I'm looking at negative spaces. And I think I showed you before, negative spaces are the spaces between objects, so I'm really going into the drawing and trying to refine the way things look between the objects and the contours of the objects. So that's the part I'm working on now. I've already done a little bit of work and I've gone around the edges, and I'm going to continue to do that. And I'm looking at the relationships between each part of my objects, because I have an object, the camera has multiple complex parts, so I'm looking at different relationships, like how far is this distance on the side, and how do things connect, where's the back, where's the front of each object. After I get this part done, my next step is to map values. And instead of just drawing out where the values are going to go, I am going to choose to just use graphite powder and make the values on the page. So at this point, I'm going to take the whole thing and turn it into a gray, like this. And then I'll be going in and erasing the highlights and adding shadows. So the graphite powder gets applied. And I take a paper towel and I blend over the whole thing. And all those gray lines that were there before, the light gray lines, are really just gone. So at this point, before you add the graphite powder, you should make sure that your lines are dark enough so that you can see them, because when you blend over the top, everything kind of disappears. Not kind of, it does. So now that the graphite powder is here, I can look at the tones in my artwork, and I can turn my drawing or my artwork or this photograph into black and white, which I hadn't done before, so you can see the tones more clearly. Now I will start adding in darker parts and erasing lighter parts. So when I'm looking at my negative spaces here, I can actually be erasing in some places. So next to the shoe in the back, I can erase this negative space and check to make sure that it's the same as the other one. And I can use that as a way to help myself out and draw a little more clearly. So I'm just going to go in and erase highlights where I see them. The ones that stick out to me the most probably are the most important anyway. And then if I notice something is off in the proportion area, I'll go back and do that at the same time. So just going to grab the brightest highlights to give you an idea of what steps to take first. And a few highlights up here that I will do. I'm going to add a lot more detail to this as well, but that's much later on. First, I'm going to just put the basic highlights in. And remember, if you screw up when you're toning, you just blend it. So it's not really a big problem. It's okay to make mistakes with this. Just work it out afterwards. This whole area is a little lighter, so I'm going to erase just a little bit over this. And this rim, especially right here, is lighter. And the top of this is lighter. I'm going to have to go back in and add some more detail to that. And my shoe has a strap on it that I didn't draw yet, but I'm going to just erase in the first part of it and draw in the strap part. So if it comes from over here and in the middle of the shoe. This is a negative space as well. I'm looking at the inside space right there. And the front of the shoe has a few more parts. So now I have all the light spots in, I would start to add a little more darkness, and that'll help me refine some things too. It looks like the bottom of this cuts down a little bit more. So now I'm adding in my shadows. Where the darkest values are, I'm going to go to those first, just so I can kind of get my shapes figured out. And anything that's kind of a medium gray, I'm just going to leave it alone. The white glittery thing there. So you see the idea, you put the graphite powder on, and then you erase your highlights, you go back in and add your dark stuff, and you can continue to draw, but now you have that graphite powder. So if I screw up somewhere, I'm not going to sweat it, I'm just going to take the tortillon or my paper towel and just blend it back in. If there's extra lines on it you don't want, you can just erase over them slightly, and then blend it in again. You don't have to get too worried, but this is where your drawing is really going to start to evolve.